Hey guys, so a lot of you have been writing in requests and questions about how Jackson's Laryngomalacia is doing, and just this past week I think the video that I posted over 2.5 years ago just in terms of Jackson's Laryngomalacia hit 10,000 views, which to some people on YouTube they have like hundreds of thousands of views and stuff on videos, but for me, that is my highest viewed video, and what that means to me is that there are other parents out there that are struggling with the issue of laryngomalacia and stridor in their infants, and they just are looking out for some sort of educational aspect. There's something missing in the education that they were given at the hospital or by their physician, and they're just wanting more information. So I wanted to come on here and give you guys an update. I know I haven't been very visible and accessible on YouTube lately, but I just really felt that after posting that video that it was only fair to give you guys an update on how Jackson is doing now and how his laryngomalacia has healed up and what concerns and stuff I have for him for right now. In terms of the timeline with Jackson and how his laryngomalacia eventually healed up, just because I think that you guys are probably pretty interested in that if you're watching this video, what started happening was when he was 0 to 6 months, his laryngomalacia, the stridor specifically, that symptom or that sign of the laryngomalacia was very prominent from when he was 0 months, like when he was fresh newborn, all the way till when he was 6 months. In the first week of his life, the laryngomalacia was very quiet. It was very subdued. It just kind of sounded like snoring or purring. But then after that week, it was like full-blown stridor noise. And it was only upon inspiration. That's the characteristic of laryngomalacia, is they have noisy breathing when they're breathing in. So when they breathe in, like in my last video, it sounds like crowing or like two blades of grass being put together, you blowing in between the two, and it's like this really loud noise. That's what it sounded like. And that lasted until, my gosh, it must have been like he was 6 months old when all of a sudden it started to kind of decline. It wasn't like 6 months came up and it was gone. That was not how it was at all. And that's kind of what I was hoping for it to be, because there are a lot of implications that laryngomalacia has on parenting in the first year of their life. Trust me, I know where you're coming from. If your child has laryngomalacia and you're going through your own like psychological issues because of the condition. Anyway, back to the timeline. 6 months came along and his laryngomalacia started to kind of decline. It wasn't like it was like full-blown gone. It was like it's a little quieter maybe. So people started to be like, oh yeah, he sounds like a little quieter. Has he been getting quieter? So it wasn't very noticeable, but it was noticeable enough, I think. Once he started crawling is when I started to notice some changes with the sound. I noticed that it wasn't happening as frequently. And he started crawling, I think it was like, I'm gonna say like 9 months he started crawling, which might have been a little bit late, but maybe not. I think it was like somewhere between 8 and 9 months he started crawling. And as he started crawling, I think the larynx started to form a little bit better. It started to kind of get not so pliable, because that's the thing with laryngomalacia. The little airways are so smushed together and they're not very sturdy. So when they breathe in, it's really hard. They have to really work to get the oxygen in. So come 8 months when or 8 or 9 months when he started crawling, I think that his throat started to get stronger. And because his throat was getting stronger, I think the muscles were helping to pull the larynx out a little bit better. So I found that the noise was starting to go down a lot. Once he started walking, I'd say that the stridor was like, it was really starting to go away. There was periods of time where he wasn't stridoring at all. But they were still there. Like I definitely could still hear it. People could still hear it. If I brought him out to the grocery store, people could hear the noise, and it was very, very apparent. However, it was going away significantly. I'd say that by the time he was about just after his first birthday, I would say that the stridor really went away. And that's when I started to notice that he was only stridoring when he was getting sick or when he was a little congested, and the stridor kind of stuck around when he was sleeping, but it came through as a snore. And that was sort of the progression of it. I know that with a lot of children, the larynx gets more non-pliable come like their 6 month, 7 month checkup. And I know other children have the laryngomalacia being apparent until their like second birthday. Kind of depends, but I know from my own experience that when you're dealing with an infant who has laryngomalacia, it is very taxing on your emotions. And it definitely disturbs the whole parental bonding situation, which sounds ridiculous and absurd, and you feel like, you know what, just because your child's making some noises, you shouldn't have any issues bonding. But we all know what postpartum depression is, and we all know how high in quantities the hormones are in your body right after you have a baby, and how, like, psychologically you want your child to be perfect. And when something's so obvious, like their airway passage isn't perfect, and people are always looking at you wondering why you have your child out at the grocery store when they're so sick, or, you know, they're looking at you wondering what's wrong with your child, like why is it making that sound, because it is different. Like, most kids can have stridor. Stridor is just the act of noisy breathing. It's the sounds, the work of breathing and that kind of thing. But the stridor is really talking about the noise that you hear. Any child can have stridor. When a child gets sick, they can have stridor. When they're in respiratory distress, they can have stridor. They could be making that kind of wheezy, like crowy sort of sound. Any child can have that. But with a child who has laryngomalacia, they always have the stridor. There might be like bouts of really bad stridoring and then kind of quiet or subtle striding or no stridoring at all. But for the most part, the stridor is there throughout the day. And when you take your child out, because this is a normal thing, your child's stridoring is normal. Whereas to another parent, the stridor is like very alarming. You don't get used to it. You always hear it because you're always reminded of it. You're always like conscious, I guess, about the fact that your child is making these noises everywhere. And anyway, so when you take your kid out and they're having like these visible respiratory issues, audible respiratory issues, people get really concerned, and it really affects you wanting to take your child out, getting your stuff done when you have your child. And I totally get that. And it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel, because when you first get the diagnosis, or when your child first gets the diagnosis of laryngomalacia, you're wondering, how am I ever going to live my life between now and when my child finally doesn't have the stridor? When is that going to happen? And when I'm talking about Jackson's laryngomalacia, he only had the stridor. His body compensated for the fact that he wasn't getting enough oxygen, and it worked harder. So he never had like the feeding issues, and he never had serious breathing issues aside from the stridor. So for parents that go through the full-blown laryngomalacia where their child needs surgery to fix the larynx so that they can breathe and so that they can eat, there is a lot of stuff that can go above and beyond the stridor. But specifically with Jackson, it was just that. And what I dealt with was the noise. And so to people that are having more extreme signs and symptoms with their child with laryngomalacia, props to you. I commend you for being able to handle a situation like that, because it is really stressful. With Jackson, he is healed up. We got through it. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. So if you're just getting the diagnosis of the laryngomalacia with your child, it will eventually come to an end. And there will be a time when that noise is not the main focus, and where that isn't like what everyone sees when they or hears when they see your child. People are going to start seeing your child for your child, not seeing your child for the noise that they're making, which sounds ridiculous, but it's honestly like, I think that with any disease process that can come about, especially with children, there is a lot of extra stuff just beyond the disease itself that affects the family. And a whole bunch of that with this condition is the lived experience of the parents, I think. Parents really have a hard time having to adjust to a child that has an issue like laryngomalacia. And if you guys have any questions, do leave them below. I will answer them, I promise. And I appreciate you guys for watching this, and I hope that this video helps someone. Okay, bye.